Jausan back at you, and I was talking about dating strata on the last video. There are some things that, and I'm doing this totally off the top of my head from some of the emails and the messages I received. I'm not basically scripting anything here. One of the things that you have to consider when you encounter a person who has all these high standards, first thing you got to ask yourself, are they reasonable? Then you ask yourself, how many people would actually qualify to be with this person? Because see, what you have to remember is this. If they're very high, you're not missing anything. That's a problematic situation that you do not want to be involved with anyway. Because what happens a lot of times, if a person's been hurt, they build up all of these different requirements and criteria before they'll date again. You don't have to go through that because that was not your experience. If they had a tough relationship or whatever, that's their problem. You know what? There are plenty of therapists out there. Go see one. But if you want to have a relationship, you should not have to deal with none of that. And when you get to a point where you're constantly dealing with that, then what happens, there's this condition called transference, where many of the characteristics that impede them are transferred onto you, just like a disease. So why even involve yourself in that situation? Another thing, you will find these what I call label droppers. They're the people who are going to tell you what the label is. They're going to they're going to have a purse, and of course they're going to have the price tag on it or the label out. These people aren't used to money. They're not used to status. They're not used to class. What they're used to is showing off. And they can do that around people in the hood or whatever. You try doing that in Beverly Hills. You try doing that in Monaco. You try doing that in places like Marbella in Spain. There are places where you cannot try to flaunt because of the fact that there's always someone out there that can outdo you. Now, one thing that I've been getting a lot of email about with this dating strata strategy and philosophy that I came up with, well, theory, I'd call it, is that people are saying that maybe you're a little bit too harsh on the bourgeoisie. I think not. I think the bourgeoisie, as far as, and not in the old colonial French context of that working class, that middle class, upper middle class, working class. I'm talking about the American bourgeoisie, where you can just go and classify yourself as bourgeois. Now, they want to be better than ghetto, so they can point the finger and say, oh, you're ghetto. That, down pointing, condescending type of response. And, of course, people have their preferences. But here's the thing. You don't have to call someone out just because they may not make as much money as you do. They may not speak with proper English, proper grammar. Because, see, everyone has a good quality. Yeah, they have some bad ones out there, but they also have some good ones. And, sometimes you don't necessarily have to date these people, but, it doesn't do well always to just wipe the slate clean with them. You never know. One of the things I've learned, I'm from the South, and I've come out to California. I've been out in California since December 15th, 1978, so I've been out here a while and traveled throughout almost every country I can think of. So I've had a chance to see the different cultures, different people, different languages, learn different lifestyles, and different value systems. Something that you'll be surprised how they change according to the environment you're in. For instance, Paris. You have to have money, but by the same token, you have to make sure that you're who you say you are. They're very upfront about who they are. What I'm getting at is you got to know who you are first before you can go and demand anything from anyone else in a relationship, period. Now, true enough, a person, and I said this in the earlier videos, a person will never disclose 100% about them. Only the things that are not embarrassing or compromising. And therefore, as an appropriate measure, you're not allowed to ask questions. Like, for instance, if a guy asked a woman how many guys she slept with, she'd be offended. Even though the guy may be asking that question to make sure that, to gauge, I wouldn't say make sure, but gauge his exposure to potential venereal diseases. A woman may ask a guy how many children he has. Guy may, be offended by that. And, of course, it goes on and on and on, tit for tat. I used to get ridiculed back in the 80s and 90s because I made an early decision, a decision when I was back in 1960, I think 69, 68, when I was a kid, that I wasn't going to have any kids. And the reason being, I could not find a legitimate reason to have a child. Well, what was the legitimate reason? Did the earth actually need another person? Period. No. And I stuck by that philosophy. And with that philosophy, I've seen so far in my life, throughout these years, some good people go through a lot of stuff that I'm so thankful I never had to go through. Child support, you name it. Don't want to do it. Now, many of them had these high standards, these dating standards, this strata I was talking about, where, they wouldn't. I remember one young lady in particular. She was rather dark complexion, and she did not want to date any dark-skinned men. She only wanted to date lighter-skinned men. Well, she went, and now she has, I'd say about maybe 5 or 6 kids by 5 or 6 different light-skinned men. None of them hang around. None of them stayed. They left her with children. And this is, of course, one simple scenario. There are others. But what I'm getting at is you cannot, everybody's looking for a panacea. What is a panacea of dating, panacea of equality, panacea for wealth, you name it. It's not there. You have to go through life and make your own way. That's the bottom line. All of this happy talk, and I know people are going to say, "Yo, you're a downer. You're negative." No, I'm realistic because of what I've seen. And I'll give you a case in point. Give you a case in point that I thought was pretty interesting. When I was overseas, when I was in the military, we had guys that were 17, 18 years old. Went over, had their first sex act done to them, and they wanted to marry the girl. So they go, get to the justice of the peace over there, get married, and then they realize how much hell they got to go through in order to bring her to the States. Finally get her to the States, what's the first thing that happens? He's got to be responsible for her family, her extended family, and everyone else, sending money home to them. And of course, after they get over here and file for their paperwork, she doesn't really need him anymore. So she's going on to a bigger and better prize. Social stratification. She's going for someone who makes more money, who's not extensively strapped out, and also someone that's fresh that she can use. Because see, it's like they're looking for gasoline in the desert. Like on Mad Max when everybody was talking about, how they wanted gasoline and everything. And there was a premium on it. But to these individuals, there's a premium on climbing up that social ladder, or being recognized, or having the attention put on them solely. And once they have that attention, see, they can't keep it. See, that's the misnomer that a lot of women get themselves caught into. Like you see all these women making sex tapes and tattooing their bodies up and coming out with all colors of hair and everything and piercings because they want to be seen. The bottom line, however, is that you're not being seen as much as you're being looked at. And there's a difference. Think about it. Think about how many guys and how many women will look at a person's tattoo before they even acknowledge the person and say hello. In some cases, they won't. Because here's the thing. Some guys like myself, and there's several others, but not all of us, of course. I never use the term all. We're offended by tattoos, in a sense. Not necessarily the tattoo that you would get with your baby's name on it or something like that. That's maybe on the arm or ankle or something. I'm talking about these full-blown sleeves, back. And here's the thing. It has nothing to do with the person. What it has to do with is the condition that caused that person to go and let somebody else write on them. That's the thing that gets me. Because here's the deal. I've seen people go and get these things that have had all kinds of trauma and drama in their lives. And this was a way of expressing themselves. But what happens, you lose the essence of the individual to focus on the graffiti on their body. And so by that time, you really don't care. And it has nothing to do with stereotypes as much as it does to say, okay, you introduced me to your artwork before yourself. So that right there tells me that there's something amiss, something's wrong. You know, and of course, it's a free country. People can do whatever they want, you know. I'm 52 years old. What do I know? You know, I've only seen this whole thing metamorphosized from the saggy pants back in the 80s with the hat turned backwards that every clone was doing, which I never understood, and had the underwear hanging down. Never understood that either. But here's the deal. Out of all of that, we're now in 2014. And that cycle is still going on. It goes on decadally. Every 10 years, there's always something. Yeah, remember, 2003, it was the low-rise jeans with the tramp stamp on the back. And so that, you know, the low-rise jeans wouldn't cover the tramp stamp so the guys could see it. Then what started happening? Everybody started making fun of it because it looked stupid. Because you go in the mall and you see like 9 women walking around with it like they're in some kind of cult or something. Went away. Now, with all of that said, I had to get that out of my system, folks. But with all that said, what happens is this. There's always somebody to discriminate against you when you discriminate against them, whether it's race, whether it's height, whether it's weight, there's so many things. And so for you to try to fit in where you're going to just accommodate everyone is foolish. And you shouldn't try to do it. You know, just because something is popular, it doesn't make you unique because you're doing the same thing. As a matter of fact, what most guys see, especially ladies, I'm going to tell you this. When a guy sees you go out and do the very same thing all the other women are doing, they automatically classify you as a follower. And I know, you know, I've heard this whole argument about the strong. You put in the adjective woman, whether she's black, Latino, German, Asian, you know, whoever. I never heard a German say it. I never heard an Asian say it. But, you know, you know what I'm talking about. But they got to put that in there. Means absolutely nothing. It's a good self-esteem booster for you or whoever uses it. But it does nothing for the guy. Because we're like, okay, well, okay, she's strong black woman. That means that I'm dealing with another man. So why should I get into a relationship with that when I want a lady? Because, see, that's what I'm getting at is that's a masculine posture. And what that does, that marginalizes your femininity. And what it does for a guy is it makes him realize that, hey, you know what? I can go and find someone who's a lot more feminine, who's a lady. And I don't have to compete with her. I see that's the thing. That's the reason, ladies, you see a lot of African American men going with women of other ethnicities and other races. It's because of that. And let me make something clear. I hear a lot of people talk about the white race or white Caucasian women and that kind of thing. Look, they're broken down just like we are. The only reason why we clump everything together is because Americans, they can't comprehend culture for the most part. It's just one big glob of ice cream that we just pour in there. He's black, he's white, he's Mexican, he's this, he's that. Because if you really broke it down, you'd have, of course, your ethnic Caucasians from